Welcome to Weekly Code Quickies. I'm your host, Norbert PM, and today we're going to take a look at 10 CSS features that you need to know. So these are not in any specific order, so let's just get started with number 1, Container Queries. Container Queries are a new feature in CSS that allows you to apply styles based on the size of the container, rather than the size of the viewport. This can be useful creating responsive designs that adapt to the size of the container, of course. Now, in the past, we still have add media queries, but now you can use add container query, basically targeting one single element when something happens, or one single container. Okay, next up, we're going to have new viewport units, which, well, viewport units are a new way of sizing elements based on the size of the viewport. These are 4 viewport units in CSS, which from the basic viewport width and viewport height, you also have viewport min width and viewport max height. These units can be useful to create a responsive design and adapt to the size of the viewport. Now, if you're listening to this episode only on the podcast, please also visit the YouTube video for this. Then we will see also a table and some examples. Also, the entire thing is down in the description, which is on my blog post. You can just copy the code examples for them. Now, let's take a look at the next one, which is CSS Nesting. Yes, CSS Nesting, well, it was not a thing, but it was an extremely useful feature in SAS. Now, this is now brought into CSS, and now in CSS, it is a long-awaited feature that allows you to nest CSS rules inside other CSS rules. This makes your CSS code more readable and maintainable. Also, it could quite lead to some problems if you overdo it. And one little caveat, if, for example, you're nesting an element in an element, so not a class, not an ID, but the element in an element, you should use the parent selector, which is the ampersand, in order to target the parent element. Because some browsers do not support this feature without the ampersand. Individual transform properties. This is a really cool feature. CSS now allows you to apply individual transform properties such as translate, rotate, and scale to an element. Now, this can make it easier to create complex animations and effects, because until now we would have an element and then the transform property, with its features like translate on the x-axis, rotate some degrees, and scale with some percentage. Now you can apply them individually to an element. You can use translate x and add some units to it, rotate with some degrees, and scale with some percentages. Next one will be Inset Property. Now this is a very cool feature. The Inset Property is extremely cool because it's a shorthand property in CSS that allows you to set the top, right, bottom, and left property of an element at the same time. Now, this can make it easier to position elements in the page. Basically, if you wanted 10 pixels from the top, then just type in inset and 10 pixels. This will automatically, and then 3 zeros, of course, because you have top, right, left, top, right, bottom, and left in that same order. You can use also pairs of them, 10 from the top and bottom, and 10 from or 20 from the left and right, or you could just set 0 and that would center it. Okay, now the next one will be Accent Color Property. This is a cool one. The Accent Color Property is a new feature property in CSS that allows you to set the color of the accent element in your design, such as links and buttons, and also anchor tags, and also, well, input tags. So this can make it easier to create a consistent color scheme across your site, of course. Now, the Gap Property for Flexbox, mostly underrated in my opinion. The Gap Property is an extremely strong property in CSS that allows you to set the gap. And by gap, meaning on both axes, you could either set gap on only one axis, specifying with gap X, or gap Y, specifying the, for example, gap with just 10 pixels and then 0, basically adding gap to top and bottom, and then 0 to left and right. Now, this can make life so much easier by creating layouts with consistent spacing between the elements. Next up, we have logical properties, but these are applying only to inline and to block. Now, logical properties are a few features in CSS that allow you to use the logical properties such as inline start and block end instead of physical properties such as left and bottom. Now, this can make it easier to create layouts that adapt to the different writing modes. Next up will be nth-of syntax. Now, the nth-of syntax is one of the most beloved features in CSS from my part. That is, not from everyone, but I just love the nth syntax. Now, this is based on the position element or the element position in a list. Now, this can be used for styling every nth element in a list. You can use two odd elements, even elements, the third element, or calculate every third element in a list. So only every third element will be, for example, styled. And last but not least, the has selector. The has selector is a new feature in CSS that allows you to select elements based on their descendants. This can be useful for styling elements that contain specific content. For example, if a div has the paragraph tag, then the background should change to light blue. Or if it has a parent and an anchor tag which has an href of gosomewhere.com. But these are just a few features in CSS that you need to know about. Now, by using these features, you can create more powerful and flexible designs for your website, of course. One last thing I do want to note, upcoming features for CSS, because CSS is constantly evolving and there are always new features being added to the language. Now, some of the upcoming features for CSS that you should keep your eyes on, and also I'm going to create the next episode based on this, are mixins and functions coming from Sass. So I can hardly wait to talk about this, but as I said, this is going to be in a new episode. So like and subscribe if you want to see that episode. Also hit the like button, of course. On this one, you can also leave a review or a couple of stars on Apple Podcasts. And in conclusion, we just discussed some of the new CSS or some of the best CSS features that you should know about. These features can be helpful to create powerful, flexible designs, as I said, by using container queries, new viewport units, CSS nesting, individual transform properties, and other new features. You can take your CSS skill to the next level, of course. So start experimenting with these new features and tell me in the comments below if this did enhance your design. Now, don't forget to like and subscribe. And with this being said, happy coding. Catch you next time. Bye-bye.